Okay, so picture this. You're finally living the dream in Phuket. Turquoise waters, white sand, and maybe even a little rental income rolling in from that beachfront property.
Sounds idyllic, doesn't it?
It does. And that's what we're diving into today, the reality of owning a piece of paradise. Specifically, we're taking a deep dive into a property management agreement from a company called, let me get this right, Apart Phuket Co., Ltd.
Apart Phuket, yes. And this document is fascinating because it gives us a real behind-the-scenes look at how property management works in Thailand, a place a lot of people dream of owning a property.
Absolutely. It's like a little window into international real estate dealings. Now, the property in question, a multi-room apartment in a condo complex right on a Phuket beach.
Location, 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 as they say. Though it's interesting, the contract doesn't specify the exact number of rooms.
It doesn't, does it? We'll have to use our imaginations on that one. But imagine waking up every morning to the sound of the waves. Pure bliss.
Sounds tempting, I have to admit. But before we get too carried away with the dream, we should probably get into the details of this agreement. And the first thing that jumped out at me was the duration. They're proposing a 24-month term.
2 years, that's quite a commitment.
It is. And here's the kicker. It automatically renews for another 24 months unless one of the parties decides to opt out.
Wow, so you could potentially be looking at a 4-year partnership.
Yeah.
It's like saying, I trust you with my piece of paradise for the foreseeable future.
Exactly. And that level of commitment suggests they're looking for a very specific type of relationship with their property owners.
It's all about trust and understanding everyone's roles and responsibilities. So before we go any further, let's break down who the players are in this tropical real estate drama.
Okay, sounds good.
On one side, we've got Apart Phuket Co., Ltd. They're essentially your boots-on-the-ground team, your property management gurus in Phuket.
Right, they're the ones handling the day-to-day stuff. And on the other side,
That would be you, the proud owner of this beachfront beauty, living the dream, or at least exploring the possibility of it.
and from what I'm seeing in this agreement, they really want to make ownership as hands-off as possible.
Oh, how so?
Well, they're offering a whole suite of services. We're talking about everything from setting those all-important rental rates to finding and screening tenants to even just managing those day-to-day tasks that could become a real headache if you're trying to manage things from afar.
Like, give me an example.
Well, things like handling check-ins, making sure the rent is collected on time, and ensuring those renters are sticking to the rules, no wild parties every night kind of thing. They're even taking care of basic maintenance and minor repair.
Wow, so it's really like having a personal assistant for your Phuket property, making sure everything runs smoothly while you're sipping margaritas, maybe somewhere a little closer to home for now.
It does sound quite appealing, but remember, every partnership has two sides. And this agreement makes it very clear that you, as the owner, also have some responsibilities to shoulder.
Right. You can't just hand over the keys to paradise and disappear completely.
Exactly.
So even in paradise, there's paperwork. What are some of the things owners need to be aware of before they even think about handing over those keys?
Well, one of the big ones, and this is pretty standard for any property owner, is insurance. You're responsible for making sure the property is properly insured.
Right. Makes sense. You can't just rely on hope and good vibes to protect your investment.
Exactly. And while Apart Phuket might be your on-the-ground team handling the day-to-day stuff for renters, you're also going to be the one who handles those initial utility setups. We're talking, getting the internet up and running, the phones connected, making sure everything is good to go for when those renters arrive.
Those little details are so important because, let's be real, the first thing anyone's doing on a tropical vacation is posting those envy-inducing photos online, right?
Yeah.
No internet, no can do. Speaking of those essential but not so fun details, what about those ever-present condo fees? Those don't just magically disappear in paradise, do they?
Sadly, no. Even in paradise, those bills still need to be paid. But, and this is a nice perk, while you, as the owner, are ultimately responsible for those condo fees, the contract does mention that Apart Phuket can actually handle those payments on your behalf.
Okay, now that's what I call hassle-free ownership.
Hmm.
But let's get down to the part we're all secretly most interested in. That sweet, sweet rental income. How does that actually end up in your pocket? What's the breakdown?
Right, the money question. Well, the contract outlines a very clear income sharing structure, which I always consider a good sign. They've clearly thought this through. And they've obviously got different ratios built in depending on the type of rental we're talking about. So short-term, mid-term, or long-term rentals each has a different split.
Okay, let's break those down one by one. Let's start with those short-term stays. We're picturing your typical vacationers here, folks looking to soak up the sun for a week or two, maybe escape the winter blues for a bit. How does the split work for those shorter stays?
So for those quick getaways, those 1 to 31 day stays, the split is 70-30,
70-30,
meaning 70% of the rental income goes to you, the owner, and Apart for Cat retains 30%. Which, when you think about it, makes sense. They're handling more frequent check-ins and check-outs, more cleanings, more communication with guests. Those short stays can actually be a bit more demanding from a management perspective.
that makes sense. More turnover, more work. All right, so what about those who want to linger a little longer, those digital nomads or maybe folks testing out that work from anywhere lifestyle? How does that midterm rental scenario work, income-wise?
So midterm rentals, which this contract defines as stays between 32 and 190 days, so a little over a month to about 6 months, the split shifts. For midterm rentals, you're looking at 80% of the rental income going to the owner, and a Parfait Care would receive 20%.
Okay, so the longer they stay, the more you, the owner, make. Seems pretty straightforward so far. But before we jump into those long-term stays, there's one important detail the contract highlights that I think is worth emphasizing.
Oh, absolutely. And this applies to both the short-term and midterm rentals we were just talking about. When we're talking about those income splits, it's essential to remember those are for the profits, the net income,
Yeah.
meaning that before that 70-30 or 80-20 split is calculated, Apart Phuket deducts their expenses from the rental income.
Okay, so they're being upfront
Yeah.
about those deductions. No hitter surprises, which is always good.
Exactly. Transparency is key. And these expenses are all pretty standard stuff. Things like any fees they might have from listing on online travel agent platforms, cleaning costs, utilities, that sort of thing. Basic maintenance would also fall under this umbrella.
So they're handling the day-to-day, so it's understandable that they're covering those costs out of the rental income. Makes sense to me. All right, now let's talk about those lucky ducks who snag a long-term lease. We're talking a year or more in your little slice of Phuket paradise. That's got to be the golden ticket, right?
It definitely seems to be the most lucrative option for the owner, at least according to this agreement. For leases of 191 days or more, the split becomes even more favorable for the owner. We're talking about 85% of that rental income coming your way, with Apart Phuket receiving 15%.
Wow. So the longer the lease, the more you, the owner, stand to make. It's like a reward for securing a stable long-term tenant. But hold on a second. We can't forget about everyone's least favorite topic, taxes. How do those work when you're talking about rental income from a property in Thailand?
Ah, yes, taxes can't escape those, even in paradise, can we? But don't worry, it seems like Apart Phuket has got that covered too.
Because honestly, the thought of trying to navigate Thai tax laws from, say, another continent, that sounds like a special kind of headache, and not the kind you want when you're supposed to be dreaming of beachside bliss.
I hear you. But luckily, according to this agreement, they take care of all that. They handle withholding any taxes on your rental income, as required by Thai law, and they even go as far as transferring your earnings directly into your bank account each month, like clockwork.
Okay, so they really have thought of everything. You hand over the keys, they handle the rest, and you watch those deposits roll in. But what happens if, for whatever reason, you decide Phuket isn't for you anymore? Or maybe just need to hit pause on this whole property ownership thing?
That is an excellent question and a perfect segue into some of the more, shall we say, nuanced parts of this agreement. Things like termination clauses and how disputes are handled, always important things to consider, especially when we're talking about international real estate.
So no getting trapped in paradise, so to speak.
Well, not exactly, but we'll dive into all of those intriguing details right after a quick break.
All right, so spill the beans. What are those nuanced parts of the agreement? What happens if someone wants to back out, paradise or no paradise?
Well, the good news is you're not locked in forever. The contract does allow for either you or Apart Phuket to terminate the agreement. However, there's a catch. A 90-day notice is required.
90 days, that's 3 months. Seems reasonable. Gives both sides time to prepare and make other arrangements. So there's definitely a level of commitment involved, but it's not like you're stuck forever. What about those what-if situations like a disagreement over a repair bill or something unexpected comes up? How are those disputes handled? Does it get messy, legally speaking?
That's where things get interesting, legally speaking. The contract specifically states that any disputes should be resolved through negotiation.
Okay, so try to find a solution amicably before things escalate,
Exactly. And it emphasizes that everything should be done in accordance with Thai law.
which I imagine could be a whole other deep dive for another day. Navigating a different country's legal system, definitely something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that even though we're talking about beautiful beaches and dream vacations, we're still operating within a legal framework. And understanding that framework is essential. Speaking of interesting legal details, there was one more thing that caught my eye in the fine print, something you might want to dig a little deeper into if you're seriously considering this whole Phuket property ownership thing.
Oh, I do love a good legal mystery. Lay it on me.
Confidentiality. The contract includes some pretty strong confidentiality clauses binding both you and Apart Phuket.
Okay, that's not completely out of the ordinary, is it? Protecting financial information, the terms of the agreement, that's pretty standard practice,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about real estate deals.
You're right. It's not unusual in itself, but the way it's emphasized in this particular contract, it kind of makes you wonder if there are specific aspects of this type of property management setup in Thailand that might be considered, well, extra sensitive for some reason.
Interesting. Like they're going above and beyond the usual need for discretion. It's like a little puzzle piece.
Yeah.
Makes you want to find the missing parts and see the whole picture, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And that's what I love about these deep dives. We don't just uncover the facts and figures, we uncover the questions. And those questions can be just as valuable, sometimes even more so, because they can guide your own research and exploration as you move forward. So, if you're really serious about making this Phuket dream a reality, maybe dig a little deeper into Thai property law, see what's considered standard practice there, and what might warrant this extra layer of confidentiality. It could be nothing, or it could be something really interesting. You never know until you look.
Consider it added to the reading list. It's fascinating how one document, one seemingly straightforward agreement, can open up a whole world of questions and possibilities. It's a great reminder that knowledge is power, especially when you're venturing into international real estate. All right, everyone, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Phuket property management. We hope you found it informative, intriguing, and maybe even a little inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep dreaming big.